start in 1 minute here. We're just waiting for Pamela's having a bit of technical challenges. So give us 1 sec. Thank you for rejoining.
Hey, let me see. Can you hear me? Hang on. Can you hear me? Oh, no, I can't hear you. Oh my God. What a nightmare. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't hear you at all. So, sorry. Kim, can you say something? I still can't hear you. Oh my gosh. I can't believe we tested and everything was working fine. And then something happened and everything went wrong. Shoot. I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can maybe. All right. Well, can you hear me now? Okay, I can't hear you anymore. Let me see. I'm so sorry. This is I can just sit on the other side, but I'm back at not hearing you. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you at all. Okay, but it's going to be hard to have a conversation because I can't hear you. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Kim, it sounds like you've been talking and maybe introducing yourself. Okay. I think we should just do it this way, and I'm sorry I won't be able to hear what you're saying. I don't know how to do it otherwise, because I don't want to postpone. We have lovely people who've joined us. So have you introduced yourself? Yeah, super. Did you already start answering a couple of the questions we had planned? Okay, so maybe I can ask you a first question. I'll just introduce myself super quickly for everyone who's joined. Thank you for joining. And I'm Pamela Clapp. I've had very odd technical problems this afternoon in Paris. I really apologize for that. We were just testing with Kim right before and everything was working fine. So I have no idea what happened, but tech. So I'm Belgian American and I've been living in Paris for about 14 years now. I, as a kid, went through both American schooling and French schooling, which is why I think this subject is so interesting. And I now have 3 French American children who are still little and who are in daycare, elementary school, and preschool. So I thought it would be super interesting to talk with Kim today about all of these topics. And so our first question that we wanted to talk about with Kim today was because her kids were born in the US and she came here when they were 4 and 6. I was really curious to know what surprised Kim the most when arriving here into the French school system. Shoot. Okay, I can't hear her either, so that confirms. Okay, cool. Then, Kim, maybe if you can just try to figure out if anything happened to your sound, we will continue. So, I'm not sure what Kim had to say about what surprised her most when her kids actually entered the French school system. I will say, as a parent who has her children in France, but hasn't yet had my children in the American system, I think what can be striking is the independence that the teachers expect from the beginning. So if you don't know this, French school is mandatory from age 3. I think we can hear you now, Kim.
Oh, good. Okay.
Hey.
And you can hear me? Amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
17 minutes in.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so perfect. So maybe Kim, we can start over. Hey, Betty. Maybe we can start over at what you were saying about what surprised you most.
Sure. Yeah. So, just quickly, for those of you that didn't hear, I guess nobody heard anything, but my kids, we moved here when they were 4 and 6. They are now 7 and 9. They started in both preschool as well as primary school in San Francisco. We moved to Aix-en-Provence. My kids are at an international bilingual school. So they do half their week in French and half their week in English. And Wednesdays, they alternate between French and English. They are on multiple like systems. So they do a Cambridge English system, they do Singapore math, and then they do the French. I guess regular, I don't know the name of it, Pamela, program of the standard French education. And so I think what surprised me most were a couple things. One, the days are really long here. Like I was shocked at 4 and 6 that my kids were in school straight with like very little breaks from starting at 8 a.m. till 3:45, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then a half day on Wednesdays. That surprised me. The second thing that surprised me was my son, who was just 6 years old at the time, starting in what would be first grade. It's called CP CP here. Already had homework, like a decent amount of homework in both subjects that he would need to spend almost every evening on, especially in French, since he didn't speak any of the language. It was challenging for us to even help him. And then I would say the other thing that was really two more surprises, but there are like no screens. Like they learn old school style, like chalkboard. They are sitting in desks like almost all day, starting pretty young. And I would say the other thing was the lunches. Like they have what's called canteen, which is like there's always a lunch served at school. It's 3 courses. And even my 4-year-old was supposed to pick up a glass plate, a glass cup, and real silverware and sit down and eat these 3 courses with like no plastic, no one really helping her that much to learn kind of like how to eat and how to eat properly and on glass plateware, flatware. So that was, I would say, the four, 4 or 5 biggest surprises for me.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I know that canteen is something that Americans who are a little bit interested in the French system and the French school usually talk about it a lot,
Yeah.
especially the three-course meal. But yeah, I definitely see how that can be surprising. But in my opinion, it also helps. It's another means to teaching them how to sit at a table and all of the rules that come with that. And I
Yes.
find it helpful to have them not only at home, because sometimes as a parent, when you're stating the rules all the time, it feels like if someone else could just come and tell them it's not just your mom and dad, like that
Totally.
everyone expects this. It
Yes.
feels helpful.
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
cool. So on that, as you said, lunches, fewer screens. What part of the things that as Americans we sometimes fantasize about regarding the French system? What would you say is actually true, and have any of those fantasies become actually more complicated when you're actually living through them and have
Yeah.
felt strange?
It's interesting, Pamela. I don't know if I had fantasies. I think I naively assumed that the American school system and the French school system were going to be pretty similar. And I have found a lot of differences. The ones I talked about, but also I would say a big one for me is, and I would say in San Francisco, if you want your kid to go to a private school, it's a pretty robust application process to get your kid into the schools. So I went through all of that, including interviews with like my son who was 2. So it was very intense from that respect. And a lot of them are also interviewing the parents to be sure, even though I would say they're mostly like we were dual working households, the parents are expected to be involved in the kids' school. So you are
Yes.
expected to sign up to volunteer, to do lunchroom duty, to read to the children. And that was one of the questions I kept asking when we toured a lot of schools in France. So we went to 6 cities before we decided on Aix-en-Provence and chose this school for a multitude of reasons. But I kept asking, well, what kind of parental involvement would you like? And every single, I would say, like directrice, the head of the school would say, "No, what,
What are you talking about?
none. What are you talking about? Like, why would you want to do that?" And so that was a shock to me, just because it was and I would say now, like in the last 3 years that my kids have been in the French school system, very few times have I ever even seen the classroom. Like I have maybe been in once each year, like just to kind of wave, or if we have conferences like the Réunion,
Yeah, in the beginning
that's
in
about
September,
it in the
the parent
beginning.
teacher meeting.
Yeah.
I just went this morning because they
Oh,
were
congrats.
organizing like the end of year preschool ateliers. So the parents
Oh,
get
nice.
to, the kids learn something with their teachers, and then the kids get to have the parents in and then show you what you have to do. So it was
Oh,
dyeing
cool.
fabric today. So you had to help them
Wow.
plunge the fabric in different colors and everything like that. But it is, you're right to point that out. It is a rare occurrence for the parents to be in the classroom. It's like,
Yes.
I think twice a year.
Yeah, I think it's maybe
So
twice a year. Yeah,
you're right.
that's
That's a big
interesting.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the other thing I think, sorry, one other thing, Pamela, on that is um I would say, and we lived in California, so this is not everywhere in the US, but it was a very heavy emphasis on like whole brain learning, social emotional development, very much of creativity was super valued, like a lot of STEAM, like science, technology was also very important. I have been shocked in kind of a bad way that that is not the same in the French system, even at an international school. It's not there because my kids are basically doubling up on they have to fit a standard of meeting the same standard in English and meeting a same standard in French and cramming that all into every single week. Something has to give. And so what gives, unfortunately, is science. Like they only do science once a month. They rarely do art, and they don't have a lot of like sport and recess because it's very academic in order to meet
Yeah,
to
it's
the
very
standards
dense.
that they need. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, Pamela, do you have a similar perspective being in the French full system? Like, do they do more art and science and kind of
Well,
creative?
art and science comes to me later when you're in college. You have like, but it's only like once a week where you have a course called Art Plastique with an
Okay.
art teacher, and then you would work on, different artwork throughout the year. It's not a huge part of the school system. When you start
Interesting.
college, you also have a music class once a week.
And do you want to explain what college is for those of
Yeah, sorry,
everyone
college is
listening?
middle school, starting in sixth grade.
And
So it
you're and Pamela,
becomes
maybe back up a minute. Your children are, you want to just name their ages and what
So my
they're in
kids
grades?
are 1.5 almost,
Oh,
five and
so
a
cute.
half, and 7 years old next week. So my oldest
Oh,
is in first grade,
okay. Same as mine. Yeah.
and then preschool and daycare.
Okay. Nice.
So yes, I think the like artistic music, all of that starts a little bit later. Where I am, a lot of the kids are signed up to extracurriculars.
Hmm.
A lot of the kids who are in school with my children have many extracurriculars. I think my kids
Oh,
have a
interesting.
lot. They have like
Uh-huh.
five. Um,
Really?
and some of the kids they're in school with have even more than that. Like they'll have
Oh,
Wednesday afternoons, weekends, some evenings, and
hmm.
it's a lot. And just taking them from one activity to the next is like another
Yeah.
job.
It's like another job.
But
Yeah.
that's definitely, I think it's a way for French parents to kind of mitigate that, the
Yeah.
fact that there's no artistic.
Hmm.
Yeah. Us in Paris, though, I don't know how it is in Aix. There are a lot of field trips to museums.
Yes. Same.
And it so happens that my oldest now this year has a teacher who is completely passionate. She loves art, so she's always talking
Oh,
about Soulage and about different artists. And so
oh,
they
that's so
do
cool.
the work that they do in class, which is very academic. She
Yeah.
tries to incorporate art into that.
That's great.
But yeah, then it's very teacher dependent, and it's
Yes.
not so much like the what they call here the program. It
Yes.
just depends on who your teacher is and how.
Yeah. That's very similar here, that it's very teacher dependent, especially I would say in the English part of the school. So if they are Australian, like I've noticed they tend to really value like the creative elements. We've had British teachers, we've had American teachers, so like it kind of just I would say depends on what that teacher is passionate
Yeah,
about. But the field trips called sortie, they tend to be like not always the most fun for the kids. Like they do like I went on one where we went to like a modern art museum and they were learning about like the different history of, why modern art exists, et cetera. And I would say that wasn't like probably like the field trips they used to do in the US where my kids would like go to a farm and milk cows, and it was just like a very different hands-on type of learning. But they are getting, I would say, like a strong cultural education within the field trips.
Yeah, we in our preschool there's a field trip to the farm every
Oh, there
September,
is.
October, and
Oh,
they
cool.
pick the apples and they make apple juice, and
Oh,
we've made
fun.
butter. So it
Okay,
probably kind of depends on
totally
where you
dependent.
live, what's available
Yes.
around. I know in our school there's a big question around like the price of to rent the school buses, because
Oh,
we don't have
yes.
school buses here like on
Oh,
the daily,
right.
right? It's something you have to rent, and then you rent the chauffeur, and so it's a
Uh-huh.
big ordeal, and it's a big budget for the school
I
to
bet. Yeah.
plan the sortie where you have access to the car.
Oh, that's so
So
interesting.
that's a huge subject. So a lot of the sorties they do here in Paris are they take the metro or they take the bus,
Yeah,
and they go to different museums that are in Paris
that's
a lot
very
of the
cool.
time. So yeah.
Yeah, super cool.
Okay, maybe we should move on
Yeah.
to when we first met, you and I talked about how the system, and you were kind of touching on this already, how the French system can be harder on our children emotionally,
Hmm. Yeah.
especially in the sense that we feel like the American system really encourages you to become your own person,
Yes.
to really develop whatever your interests are.
Yeah.
And in France, it's kind of like you need to fit into the mold. And if you
Yes.
don't, your school experience might be very difficult.
Yes. Yes, I completely agree with that. And that was, I would say, one thing I did not expect. I come from a family of educators, like my grandmother, my mother, my sister. And so they are very much like always sharing the adaptive learning approaches and meeting the child where the child's at and how to like optimize so that each child can learn in the best optimal way for that individual child. And I, again, sort of naively assumed that would be the same here, and it is absolutely not. It is very much like teach to conform to a standard. And if you're falling behind, like you're going to have to figure out tutors or ways to kind of catch up on, I would say, on your own. And vice versa, if you're kind of at the advanced end, they're not going to really do that much more for you if you're kind of sitting there bored in a couple subjects, for example. And so I think the hardest part for us, especially I would say for my son, who's now 9, is very much of a creative and wants to kind of express and raise his hand and maybe offer like a point of view on something. And that's not always valued in the French system. I would say it tends to be, I would say, like kind of old school strict, where you sit in the desk, you listen to the teacher, they're going to lecture you, you are tested like very often. If you raise your hand, it is only to answer a question, not to participate necessarily in like a broader discussion. And that has been, I would say, really kind of challenging for my children. I think unfortunately you kind of see kids either kind of become deflated sometimes if they're not used to that teaching, or I would say the other end, like my daughter kind of just becomes a people pleaser, like, okay, yes, I'll do that, I'll do this, whatever you need me to do. And neither is good.
Yeah.
And so I would say that part has been more challenging than I expected.
Yeah, it definitely touched on this even with French friends. It's a pretty passive environment. So you're
Hmm.
expected to sit there and receive pretty much all
Yes.
day long,
Yes.
starting very young. I think in
Hmm.
preschool they have not yet so much, like they don't have to sit all day, but
Right.
starting in first grade, definitely you're
Yeah.
expected to sit at your
Yes.
desk. Don't talk to the other
No.
kids sitting next to you. Listen to the
No.
teacher. Answer correctly if we do ask you anything, and that's
Correct.
pretty much it. So yeah, I agree with you definitely on that.
There's
Um,
that one more thing on that, Pamela, that I'd love to hear your perspective, but I would say they're like bad behavior is definitely not tolerated and good behavior is just expected. expected, but not
Yes.
necessarily rewarded. Like there isn't like you did so well on this, like you're getting stickers or stars, or there's no like positive necessarily reinforcement of
Yeah.
good behavior. It's just the standard. Like, and if you're
Yes.
not meeting that, there is a bit, at least at the school my kids are at, like a fear-based approach. Like they threaten to go to the principal often. One of the things I was most shocked by, and I would love to hear if the story is similar, if a child, like they kind of get like three strikes, you're out. And so if a child, for example, my son is in third grade and he had a boy in his class who was misbehaving, he hit strike three and he gets sent down a grade. So he sits in second grade because he's told they're acting like a second grader. And then if you're still misbehaving, he's sent down another grade and he's sitting with the first graders. So one day my kids came home and my daughter was like, "Oh, this boy from your class was sitting in my class today because he misbehaved." Like, and so this is like completely unacceptable in the United States. And here, like, I don't even think any parents were aware of it. I only knew about it because it was both my children that happened to be in those grades with that experience. So also just kind of
I
something
have heard
else.
of this recently. I can't remember where, but I have heard of it, and yeah, it is shocking. I don't know that they do it at my kids' school, but you
Okay.
never really know. That's the thing too. Kind of what you're touching on is you don't always know what's going on in the classroom and what exactly
Mm-mm.
are the consequences that one teacher would use because it could vary from one teacher to the
For
other
sure.
too. I
Yes.
think for now in my kids like lower grades, I know there is a consequence that's like you're gonna have to go to the principal's office.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's a
like
big one.
I mean, honestly, she's not even that scary. But so it feels like it's kind of like this consequence gets thrown around like, oh, you're misbehaving, you're gonna go to the principal's office.
Yeah.
And then like
For sure.
what is she actually going to do?
What is she gonna
Probably
do? Right.
nothing.
Totally.
But, it's like, we'll just throw that around. So I find that
Yeah.
pretty funny. But yeah, you're right. They do like traditional punishment, which probably doesn't happen
Yeah. For sure.
in the US. Okay. So then we wanted to talk about how you were telling me that you're kind of thinking ahead already as to the options that you have in X. And I
Hmm.
found that super interesting because I think maybe something that people don't necessarily realize is that even here in France, which is, of course, a much smaller country, there is a discrepancy between schooling in Paris, schooling in
Yeah.
Provence, and different
Yes.
regions. It just can vary a lot. And as we were saying, from teacher to teacher and from school
Yes.
to school.
Yes.
So if you could kind of touch on that, I think it would be super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, like we had lived in New York City and San Francisco in the United States. I did not grow up there. I grew up in the Midwest. I went to Catholic schools, like small little Catholic schools, my whole life, and so I kind of just I would say assumed, given my children were in New York and San Francisco, that they would have a ton of options when we moved here, and that's really not the case. Like. I would say, like, for example, because of what I was sharing with my son and needing more creativity, I started to research like what are our other options of schools that could be a possibility that'll have more science or technology or just more creative thinking. And they are extremely limited. Like I would have to drive 45 minutes to Marseille. And Marseille is like the closest big city to Aix-en-Provence. And then even then, like it's not, I would say, the level that I would have expected of just a different type of schools. Like, in fact, I would say there's so much uniformity, and tell me if you agree, Pamela, of the French school system that yes, there's Montessori, and yes, there's there's obviously international bilingual schools, but there isn't like some schools that are going to be very far on like the creative ends and some that are like super academic. The range is just not as broad here, and that is something that's more challenging. And so if you're someone who's considering moving to France or moving abroad in general, like take that into account. I would say, especially as your kids get older, or if you have middle school or high school children, the options, if one school is not a great fit, it might be pretty limited outside of that.
Yeah, you're right. And I think one of the reasons, maybe Betty knows more about this, but one of the reasons I think is because so private French schools are usually, most of them are what they call sous contrat, which means
Mm.
that they do get aids from the state. So they're
Okay.
not fully privately funded.
Yeah.
So they do have to use whatever the French education program is, they
Mm,
have to apply that because they are
yes.
affiliated to the French state, even if they are private schools.
Interesting.
And so the French state actually, for instance, pays the teachers either
Yeah.
way. So I think that's also what makes it more uniform, because
Interesting.
most private schools are still funded by the state, not entirely, but
Yeah.
partially. And which is not the case for Montessori schools,
No,
which is
interesting.
interesting. And I
Yeah.
think I have some friends who put their kids in Montessori schools
Okay.
because they found that that could be,
Mm,
a better way of learning. But then again, it's challenging because it's not recognized by the state.
yes. Interesting.
So then, if you want to put your kid in a more traditional French school, or even a traditional, sorry, private school, then I think it would be
Yeah.
more challenging potentially, because then they would question what happened at the Montessori school, and does the kid
Yeah.
actually have like the
The academic
niveau?
rigor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
so yeah, I think that contributes probably, to that uniformity.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we had another interesting point we wanted to discuss, about what you touched on it earlier. And were you surprised about the little extracurricular activity and the little time devoted to sports in the French system? And have you found ways, kind of maybe, or to kind of go around that, or?
Yeah, that's we've had I would say a journey with extracurriculars. My children in the US were probably like typical American children. They were very like scheduled. Like they were in a lot of extracurriculars. I wanted them to be exposed to a lot of like sports and try new things and instruments and the whole gamut. And so they, even at young ages, like had tried a lot of things. And there were things my daughter ended up really liking that she wanted to continue in France. One of them was ballet, and the second was gymnastics. We have now tried 4 to 5 different of each of those types of programs, and all of them end up as they get older and more advanced, incredibly strict, similar to the French school system where it is taken really seriously. They are not about like, let's jump around and get energy out and have fun. It is much more of like, did you meet this level of this gymnastic skill and therefore you're ready for the next level and competition. And so it becomes, and it's, I don't think it's that different necessarily in a competitive sport in the US, for example. I think sometimes the approach, at least for my American children, feels just like a little bit more harsh, and they end up not loving it, especially after a school day where they've already, like on the French days where it's already, 8 hours in French, and then they're going to kind of a strict extracurricular. It just honestly became a bit too much. And so now we are in a place where we pick one activity. My kids do an activity on Wednesdays, like a sport activity, and then they do an instrument on the weekends. So we have right now my daughter's in violin and my son is in piano, and we are always open and we're looking at other things, but they are, they're not necessarily in the like, we've sort of scaled back. Like I think just I looked at like how much the school was sort of uh not heavy but like a lot on them, and
Yes.
decided that I didn't want to add like more pressure onto them, and so I'd rather have like childhood be preserved and let kids be kids here after school. And if I have the flexibility to be with them and don't have to put them in like a ton of extracurriculars, we've kind of made that choice personally.
Yeah, Betty is saying a good example would be the music schools, conservatories. I suppose, Betty, you mean
Yes.
for like the rigor that is expected? Do you
Yes.
find that too, Kim?
They haven't started in the conservatory right now. We found a wonderful like French older man teacher who comes over to our house and just teaches them without, I would say, any expectation that they need to be at a certain level. But the next step would be for them to be at the conservatory, which I know brings another level of rigor and competition and everything like that. So we're not there yet.
Yeah, yeah. We have some kids around who are already doing solfège, so learning
Oh
to
yeah,
write music, and I think it's quite demanding.
intense. Yes.
Just on the extracurriculars, I know, so it's not the case where I am right now, where my kids are. A lot of kids have a lot of extracurriculars,
Mm,
but we're also in a pretty privileged environment. I do know that a lot of French families cap at one activity per year.
okay.
So they will let their, especially if they have multiple kids, they will let their kids choose one activity and
Yep.
tell them that they need to, go to that all year. They need to
Yep.
commit, and then if they want to change at the end of the year, usually, it's fine, they can change,
Yeah.
but they have to commit to that one activity.
Yes.
So I always just kind of try to remind myself of that because, as I said, my kids do a lot. And I just kind of try to always look at the way French people do it and think,
Yeah.
well, maybe in a sense, because school is that demanding,
Yeah.
maybe they're not wrong. Maybe I
Yeah.
do need to scale back too. So I think it's probably a different way of looking at the whole picture,
For sure.
instead of our like maybe habit of saying, oh, let's have them do as much as they can, and then maybe they'll pick what they prefer, but at least they'll be
For sure.
exposed to a lot of different
Yes.
things. And I feel like, yeah, maybe the French system isn't so well adapted to that way of doing
Yeah, I think
things.
it's even the way, I don't know if it's like this in Paris, the way you have to sign up for extracurriculars, like it's very interesting. In the end of the summer, they have this big, like, let's just call it like a fair, where
Hmm.
there's little booths and the kids can like, there's a whole section of gymnastics, a whole section of dance, a whole section of every kind of sport. And then they get one trial class for free. But then after they do that trial class, they have to commit to the entire year. And as a parent, you pay that entire amount.
Yes.
And I have lost so much money because they start it and their trial class might be okay, but then two more in, they're like, I don't want to do
I
this
don't want to go
anymore.
anymore.
No, and you're committed for the whole year. So that's, I would say, the other reason probably a lot of French families only choose that one, because it's actually like a pretty decent amount of money you're putting
Yeah,
up front to then,
that's true.
yeah, have your kid in that. So it's a different, I would say it's a different system altogether with that.
Yeah. And then as they grow up, just to finish up on extracurriculars, as they get older, so they'll, depending on the sport, if it is sport, then they'll start competing. I think
Yes.
around 8 or 9, and then that
Yes.
also changes the game because then instead of going once a week, then they have to practice
Correct.
multiple evenings after
Yes.
school. And a lot of kids also actually quit at that time because they say, you
I
know what,
know.
I actually enjoyed it, but not enough to go like three
No.
times a week and
Totally.
compete. And
Yes.
so I find that pretty interesting too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Um, so my last, not last, but I wanted to ask you what the ideal hybrid for you would be. What in the French system would you keep, and what
Oh,
would
it's
you
such a
keep from
good
the American
question.
system to have like an ideal situation?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I've actually thought about this because I'm like, I want to. I'm not an educator by trade, but I would love to create a school that had this. Here's the good things I love about the French system, and I think and I'm going to speak more to France in general, and you can tell me if you agree with this. Living in Paris, I would say childhood in a lot of ways like is preserved because there's not so many screens and technology and kids aren't on social media. They don't get phones like immediately. Like my son is 9, he's in 3rd grade. There's not even conversations about getting a phone. Like nobody all the kids in his class, a lot of French parents, a lot of international like no one is saying like, oh, our kids need phones and why don't they this it's just it's really a non-conversation and I personally love that. So I would keep that part of like just letting kids be kids a little longer and off of like the need for a child to have a phone at a younger age. So I love that. I love the way that they have learned to eat and like sit properly, like understand the importance and value of a meal and the time that they're allowed to have for a meal. In the US, just for example, my son had like maybe 15 to 20 minutes to like
Yeah.
quickly rush down food and then it was recess and then back to whatever was next. And this, I feel like they actually have like a real meal. They have conversations with other kids and it's actually just lovely. So I would absolutely keep that. I would keep like, I do think the sortie, like the field trips are really interesting from like broadening their horizons. Like my kids have done really, I would say beyond just museums that aren't as interesting. Like they've done a lot of like hands-on like learning environments and things that I would say are more culturally rich than we were getting even in San Francisco. I would also keep I would say like the fact that my kids now are completely fluent in French, like the learning of two languages intermixed and with kids from all over, that they don't see a difference, that they can easily flex between speaking French to speaking English to understanding, oh, this boy is Italian and doesn't speak either one of these languages, but I'm still going to play with him. Like the open-minded culturalness I love for my children. And I would say the other thing I would keep about the French system, like when I look back, I mean, it's very academic, but my kids are like, I would say almost two grades ahead in some subjects than the US. And I've compared this curriculum with my sister who teaches first grade and what my daughter has learned in first grade in France, both in two languages, is like at a third grade level in the US. And so that I would say has is a positive and negative. But overall, like they are really learning a ton, and they're, the academics do work, like they can read at high levels. I think all of that is important. What I would love to adopt from the American system is so much of the creativity, like social emotional learning, the idea that kids have opinions and that's okay to express them, and freedom of like just speech and be able to think outside of the box and not fit into like a conformed mold. I would definitely, and I miss that quite a bit of the American school system. And it's interesting because I don't think I fully appreciated it until I moved away and saw how kids' brains and actually how countries then evolve from different types of schooling. And I just think that's incredibly interesting as well. So those would be my things.
Yeah, I
What about
agree.
you?
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with the ability to be fully yourself and pursue more of what you actually enjoy and have
Yeah.
also like more hands-on work because it's very academic and just a lot of writing here and a lot of written exercises, which can be hard on the kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. So I want us to keep this short because we had our technical issues in the beginning. If you think we can move on to a quick Q&A.
Yeah,
If
that'd be great.
anybody
If
has
anyone,
questions, please feel free to go ahead and type them in the little box
yeah, maybe
below.
while they're typing, Pamela, one thing we didn't touch on was the kind of school calendar. We talked about the days, but I think it's pretty interesting to share that the calendar and when and how often the kids go to school is very different from the US.
Yes.
And so, for example, and Pamela, please jump in, but I think it's similar in Paris. They start like I would say right after Labor Day, which would be like early September.
Yes.
They have then the school year is divided into terms, like four terms. They're 8 weeks each, but 6 weeks of school and then 2 weeks off, and then 6 weeks of school, 2 weeks off, 6 weeks of school, 2 weeks off. So they go longer in the summer. My kids finish June 21st this year. And I think sometimes there's other schools that are even later, like into July.
Yes.
So there is like I would say a longer school year, but with quite frequent long
Breaks.
breaks in between.
Yes.
So that's just one other thing I wanted to kind of share, because if you're a dual working household, and I would say a lot of I would more companies, and Pamela, you can speak to this, but understand the school system as a working parent. But this would be like almost impossible, I would say, to manage in the US when most, at least like corporate employees like I was, have 2 weeks of vacation in the entire year. And here they're basically at like a summer plus 8 weeks of vacation. So anyways, just something I
Yeah.
wanted to know.
So there are options where the public schools offer what they call centre de loisirs now. So it's
Okay.
basically like the school opens up and you can drop your kids off all day, but instead of like learning, they'll do activities. Sometimes they can
Oh,
do sorties.
interesting.
So in the
Oh,
summertime,
nice.
usually they organize more sorties.
Okay.
I guess it really depends where you live and also what's available around.
Okay.
But it can be quite fun. The kids can, if they're already in that school, then they would see other kids who also go to that school. Sometimes kids from other schools around also end up
Oh, that's nice.
being together in the same centre de loisirs. But, you know, obviously it's not as fun for the kids as being able to go on vacation with their parents or
Yeah, of course, if they
doing
can.
something
Yeah.
else. So that's for sure. Like, yeah, every 6 weeks you do have to figure out like what are we
Yeah.
going to do with the kids
Yes,
if
for
you're not
two
able
full
to take
weeks.
vacation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for
So
sure.
definitely. So we have a question. I'm considering retiring to Argenton-sur-Creuse. Your thoughts? Is that a place that you know, Kim? I've never been.
I've never been.
So, but I do think retiring in France sounds very nice.
I totally agree. And I would say if is that southern France maybe or northern? Do you
Creuse
know?
is kind of in the center in
Oh,
my
center. Okay.
limited geography knowledge.
Okay, I was gonna say if you want
Hope
better
I'm not
weather,
wrong.
definitely come by me in the south. There are a lot of retirees in Aix-en-Provence from all over the world because the weather, there's 300 days of sunshine a year, and it is really a lovely, like easily walkable, friendly city. So, and it's kind of like a little Paris in a lot of ways, like some of the same, caliber of shopping, et cetera. So there's if you care about that, I would say the south over, like I know Bordeaux we were considering, and it's very, very foggy.
Yes. And then there's always quick trains to Paris, which is
Yes, and
also
we're a
nice
3 hour train
if you
from
need to
Paris,
go.
which is yes. And of course, why would you not want to?
All right. So I'm going to have to run soon to go to
Yes.
school pickup
Oh, yes, I know, same here. I'm like, it's school pickup in about 10 minutes. So,
soon.
um, amazing. So, anyways, if you guys have more questions, please just message Pamela and I. And I just wanted to also say, really excited. Pamela and I met because I started a podcast called Cuckoo, and it is all about what it's like as an American living in France and talking a lot about subjects like this. Pamela, I was so excited to have her as a guest.
It
We
was
met
so
in
fun.
Paris. Oh, good. A few weeks ago, and her episode is actually coming out next Thursday, June 4th. And so please watch for that. I will also put it on Substack. So follow both of us to see that as well. And you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. So excited to also, share that as well.
Yes. And it's a really fun episode. I've never done a podcast before, but
She was great. You'll
I'll
love
try
her.
to listen. I don't
Yes.
know if I'll be able to stand listening to myself, but that's something else. Yeah, we are super happy to have done this live today and wanted to also say that we know that we currently have like smaller kids and starting in middle school and so lycée, which is high school, it becomes also pretty different and a lot more
Yeah.
intense for the kids versus the US. So if ever that's something that you're also interested in, we're super open to maybe discussing because this is a topic that has so many things to say. We
Yes.
really tried to center it for today to stay pretty, what would be the word, Kim? Focused.
Focused. Yeah.
But there's definitely a lot of different ways we can take it and a lot of different things we could discuss. So feel free to let us know if it's a
Yeah, and
topic that resonated.
if there's other topics you guys are interested in, Pamela has a wealth of experience having lived in Paris for 14 years, right, Pamela? Is that right?
Yeah,
And her being completely fluent, obviously, in the language and married to a French man, like there's just a lot we could talk about, I would say, regarding a million other topics. If there's something else where we would love to do another live. Hopefully we don't have technical challenges because we'll have it all figured out by then. But thank you
let's
guys
blame it
again,
on
and keep us
Substack.
posted. Yes, exactly. We'll have to send them a message. So awesome. Well, thank you everyone for
Thank you,
listening.
everyone.
Okay.
And
All
have
right.
a
Take care.
wonderful day if you're in the US and a hot afternoon
Yes,
if you're anywhere in France.
exactly. All right. Thanks
Thank you
everyone.
so
Take care.
much.
Okay. Bye.